The last time I came at you with a video, I was talking about the Nintendo Game Boy Advance. Well, this past summer, I had a revelation, which I'll explain to you in my next video, about the next Nintendo system entitled the Nintendo DS. As for the Nintendo DS itself, I will talk about that in my next video, which will revolve around Nintendo portable video game systems. And anyway, when I first got into the Nintendo DS, the first cartridge that I ended up getting at GameStop, actually I shouldn't say cartridges at all, the Nintendo DS, as you can see here, takes game cards, which look very similar to SD cards that you use in cameras or other electronic digital filing items these days, but they're a little thicker. And the first game card that I actually got for the Nintendo DS was, if I understand it, a pack-in game with the original Nintendo DS, which again I'll get into in my next video, Super Mario DS. And what that is Super Mario 64 DS, which is Super Mario 64 with some minor refinements made for the Nintendo DS. Now, if you all remember the Nintendo 64, that was Nintendo's 64-bit system from 1996 that was actually their first to have full 3D graphics on their games. When I first played Super Mario 64 on my friend Adam's Nintendo 64 in 1996, it scared the daylights out of me because I could not deal with a video game in 3D at that time. It was just too visually intimidating. And to a degree it still is, but it was my entrance to the new world of video games. So, I kind of figured, oh, well, that's their first video game. Well, the Nintendo DS is going to be all, 3D games like that. And they're not. In fact, the majority of these games that you see here are not 3D. A lot of them are conventional, but very well done 2D platformers. But let me go on. The next game is just that. It's basically a modernized update of the original Super Mario Bros. Similar sound effects, similar setups, but the actual animation of the video game and the sprites look a lot like the Super Mario artwork for the cartridges or the 80s cartoon series. So it's a very accurate Super Mario rather than the very pixelated Mario we've known from the past. So it's a more realistic looking Mario, but the same 2D platformer as the original game, with new levels, of course, but it's a good game. I'm still trying to deal with that because Super Mario 64 DS is a rather complicated game if you're not used to 3D. Yoshi's Island, I actually got that while I was waiting for my Game Boy Advance copy of Yoshi's Island, which you just saw to come. And this is my most recent addition for the Nintendo DS, Mario and Luigi, Bowser's Inside Story. From what I can see so far, it's a combination between a 2D platformer and an RPG. It's an interesting game. You can play as Bowser on one area and it's Mario and Luigi together on another. This is Mario Kart DS. That is probably my favorite game on the Nintendo DS thus far. It is really fun. It controls well. You get all kinds of different cup options from the various Mario Kart games. It's a great game. If you like racing games and you're getting into the Nintendo DS, I highly recommend you get Mario Kart DS. It's a great game. Next up, we have Final Fantasy A2, actually Tactics, I should say. Final Fantasy is an RPG series I've been wanting to get into. That game's a little bit complicated, but that's an RPG. It's a totally different experience from a platformer. Speaking of RPGs, I have Pokemon Diamond version. My friend Justin DeWitt recommended that. Thank you very much, Justin. Wanted to give you that little shout out. I love Kirby. I had Kirby's Dream Land, the original Kirby's Dream Land on the original Game Boy. I love it. And it's included as part of this, Kirby Superstar Ultra. It mixes the past Kirby games with color and new ideas. I didn't even know Kirby could shapeshift when he ate one of his enemies, and I found that out via that game. This is the Mega Man Zero collection. Apparently they look like they're the Mega Man series games from the Game Boy Advance. Prince of Persia, The Forgotten Sands. This game is something you have to play with the stylus used on the DS, which, again, I'll get into in my next video. Tetris Party. This is actually a game that features different types of Tetris in different ways. That's pretty interesting. This is Metroid Prime Hunters. The original pack-in game with the first DS was actually I believe a first or second level of that game is kind of a demo, but I guess they used Super Mario DS later. I don't know if DS was actually a pack-in game at all. It may not have been. Atari's Greatest Hits Volume 1. My video game history starts not with Nintendo. It started around 1988, but Nintendos were very expensive and the cartridges were very expensive, so I ended up with an Atari 2600. So I remember those games from the late 80s, because that's what I got. So those are the games I remember, so I got that mostly for nostalgia. But as the Angry Video Game Nerd, another shout out here, had said, there's a difference between classic and outdated. And the reason why Atari is classic is because they're primitive, but there's something about them that you just want to go back to because they're very playable and they're very interesting. Indiana Jones, The Staff of Kings. That is actually an interesting game. It's another 3D game. I don't know if you'd call it 64-bit, but I think it's supposed to be that. A lot of stylists play in that too. The Simpsons Game, a 2D platformer, probably based on the Simpsons movie. I've seen it also produced for the PlayStation 2. Wreck-It Ralph. I love the irony. A video game about a movie about video games. I just love that idea, and it's actually perfect. Tron Evolution, very similar. That's actually a top scroller, but I have yet to get past the level that I'm on. So, Rock Band. Now, this is one I got when I first got a DS, and it was just from kind of the bargain bin. Just kind of interested me. This one I got because of a YouTube review, 100 Classic Books. It's actually not a game. It's an anthology of classic books, ranging from The Wizard of Oz to The Tale of Two Cities. And they actually have a tutorial at the beginning, which asks you what your tastes are and your interest in literary genre and selects one for you. I actually think that's a good thing. My mother and father, if they had a video game system like this, they were really big in education, they probably would have gotten this for me because they would have encouraged me to play a game like that. And it still interests me. Picross 3D is actually a similar idea. You use numbers and crossword-like equations to create objects, and it guides you through a tutorial. It's kind of educational and kind of about low-grade animation, so it's kind of interesting. That was also recommended to me on YouTube. And the Michael Jackson Experience. I am a major Michael Jackson admirer. Not just because I admire his music so much, but because listening to his records tuned me on to musicians who I love to this day. The Seawind Horns, Greg Fillinganes, Toto, but that's a whole other story. The late Louis Johnson on Billie Jean. I got into a lot of music because of Michael Jackson. His albums led me to other people. And anyway, this album, this thing just basically allows you to use your stylus to make a cartoon Michael Jackson, do the moonwalk or whatever he does, and different dances and different music videos, Smooth Criminal, Billie Jean. It's just kind of a fun game. You know, I haven't really experimented much with it, but it's fun. So that's what I have for the Nintendo DS. And next up are my Nintendo portable systems. So I'll see you next time.